Kayfabe Weekly Shoot 66. My name's Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Jimmy, what day is it?
May 21st.
How's that Kickstarter doing, man?
It's doing well. I think I'm 900% funded at this point.
I think we could go for 1,000. I know it's double last time we connected with the Kayfabers out there, man. So
it's going great. Seem to be building up more and more, shares, and I did 3 interviews yesterday that'll be coming out over the next several weeks. So attention seems to be coming along well.
Super cool, man. Let's talk more Kickstarter. Let me just pimp the Patreon right now, because at patreon.com/edpiscor, I'm serializing Red Room pages every Tuesday. It's the old Hip Hop Family Tree schedule, like boing boing, you know what I mean? Like clockwork. I finished 94 pages of the comic so far. The first quarter of issue 1 is up there and available, man. Like drug dealers shit. You get the first taste for free if you want to support the thing, because that first 9 pages is a good indicator of what you have in store. Will be like no surprises in terms of gore factor and shit like that, man. So, support the Patreon if you want to keep appraised of the pages before anybody else. And I want to salute everybody who has funded your Kickstarter, who has signed up for the Patreon, because it's pretty cool, man. And the industry of comics is pretty crazy right now. So we got to take some measures into our own hands.
Ed, how do you describe Red Room to people? How do you describe it as a story?
So it's like I introduce a problem, and it's an urban legend, man. The idea is that by way of the dark web, creating the possibility of anonymity, and cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, creating the situation where you can transact money without a traditional paper trail. There are people on the internet who stream and broadcast murder for entertainment. Now, how can you murder somebody that could be identified? That has to be addressed in a story like that. Who are the murderers? Who would give money to participate and watch something like that? Of course, the 1%ers. You know what I'm saying? For the man who has everything. Why not go like this or that? It's old school Coliseum terms. So my idea is a series of 20 to 64 page stories. We'll call them issues, looking at that problem in many different angles. That's a comic. Horror comic.
It's a great description. I love it, and that's why I asked you about it. I've been fortunate. It's like I've had my own private Patreon feed, and watching these issues come together, it's been incredible. And I think you've done some really creative stuff, taking that concept and really making it into outstanding comic book issues.
Appreciate it, man. And it's going to be going places, man. But let's get back to the business. But first, I want to give shouts out to Brian Lohner, who supplied us with this week's thumbnail art.
Very nice, Brian.
Double
I
Dragon.
love it.
I'm a fan.
Yes.
Bobby Lee. It's not Bobby Lee. It's like Jimmy Lee, and I forget the other brother, man. Yeah. Bobby Lee's a comedian, but of course, Double Dragon, perfect. And shouts to Brian for hooking us up. His contact information, his website, his Instagram is in the description below this video, as well as our email address and the dimensions if you want to supply us with future Cartoonist.kayfabe Weekly thumbnail art. Very simple, man. The pixel count is, and this is wide, 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels tall. Colorful, me and Jimmy in some cool scenario. No COVID virus fucking drawings, even if it's us beating it up or whatever the fuck. I just don't want to see it. No number. Don't anticipate the number of the Kayfabe Weekly. And of course, man, you got to make us look cool.
And if you want to make a mailbag piece of art, we're open to those too.
We have the best fucking audience on comic book YouTube, man.
Absolutely.
Proven fact. And we're going to be looking at some stuff in the future. Shouts to Eli Schwab, who created the Wizard magazine, a 200-page magazine that was sort of cultivated from the Kayfabe audience. You can't have something that cool if you don't pluck some weeds sometime.
A lot of talent. A lot of talent out there watching.
Yes, sir, man. Back to the Kickstarter real quick.
Yeah, so look for an update tomorrow. I've been updating, trying to not overwhelm everyone with updates. But what's coming up is I'm going to post some stretch goals. I have another batch of drawings that I'm going to add that people can grab. And like I said, just moving forward, one of the stretch goals is coming out of one of the interviews that I had with the reporter, as opposed to more of the comic-centric side of things, which also have some of those as well. But with the interviewer, we were talking about the Freedom of Information Act requests. I'm going to do a Freedom of Information Act request. I'm having another reporter kind of walk me through that process, but I'm looking for any kind of Octobriana. Was it ever mentioned? Did it come through any government, any U.S. government files? So I'm going to look for that, and for Peter Sadecki, the author of the original book, because people have been sending me articles about this background, and they're fascinating. But his behavior is pretty erratic around the time of the book being published. Think about it, like he's fleeing he's defecting from behind the Iron Curtain with some stolen artwork. And so it's an interesting time historically, and I just wonder, was the CIA watching him? Were they involved? What's out there? So I'm looking forward to that, and it's kind of a fun part of the game, and it's going to be part of the stretch goals, and that I'm starting to compile all of these articles, references, notes. It's almost like a checklist. There were all those old fanzine checklists for like Harvey Kurtzman or Alex Toth. This is going to be sort of an Octobriana checklist. That will involve more than just comics, but also things like articles and background on that character, because that's what drew me to the character in the first place. I'm going to share some of that. Is probably a PDF, another e-zine is probably how that will form.
Now, because we have cultivated such a great audience in comics and plucked the weeds, I call them the Kayfabe Brain Trust, man. Salutes to you if you're privileged enough to be part of the family. And there were some comments about Amazonia as being the origins of this character. Is this something that you knew about before Octobriana? The fact that it shows up in Warren magazines and junk?
Yeah, so originally Sadecki hooked up with a couple of Czech artists, and they couldn't really do something like Octobriana. They'd have been killed for that.
Right.
But he was trying to make comics. He was interested in comics, and so he got these guys to do these Amazon-like character. And that's what he stole. That's what he took. And then he doctored those to make those into Octobriana. I think he was unable to sell it as the Amazon character. Right. And whenever that didn't work and he's sort of spiraling out of control, somehow Octobriana emerges out of that.
Dig.
So it's stolen artwork. He was taken to court by those guys for stealing that artwork.
Wow.
And there are, there's a lot of documentation about this. I mean, it was a legal case, so there is information, very clear factual information about this whole thing, and that's some of the stuff that I plan to share going forward as I'm like gathering this information, because it really is like an onion, just layers of this stuff, which all makes me like the character even more. It's one of those rare public domain characters. And I think there's a great story around it, and I'm trying to assemble it as much as I can because it's pieces everywhere. There was a David Bowie art exhibition, and the book was part of it. He was a huge fan of the character. It's kind of a different piece. It's totally different than the origins, but it's still a piece of Octobriana history that David Bowie was, interested in this character and did some creative work with the character.
I forgot I don't need this. We were doing some shoot interviews and some test bullshit, and I just saw like the white dangling from my ears. Jimmy, can I cut a promo and sell your Kickstarter a little bit, man?
Yeah, man.
Now you just chime in and stop me if I'm not saying the right thing, or if I, if I get something wrong, but I don't think I am. Kayfabers out there. See, I'm going to do it like wrestling style a little bit, man. A little bit of Jim Cornette.
We've been building to this forever.
So your typical Kickstarter is in the software community what they would call vaporware. A person might do the bare minimum amount of pages required for like an independent comics submission. Cover, 3-4 pages. They do the Kickstarter, and they sort of see what comes in. Every now and then, it'll be a jobber scenario where the money will come in, and based on that cash, they will allocate their hourly wage and put that amount of time in. You know what I mean? I made X amount of dollars. I will put X amount of hours into this because that is my page rate or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? It's not about just really grinding and trying to make the best comic. It's vaporware. You're selling and you're buying into a concept until the day that the person makes the book. And you don't know when that day is coming. But very often, I would say 9 times out of 10, that book is not even close to ready to go by the time you plunk down your money to support this thing. Jim Rugg is a dude that I've known for 20 years. He's been super reliable, never missed a deadline. And to even begin Cartoonist.kayfabe, we are in business. We both put money down into a little kitty and incorporated, and we started a whole business. I would not do that with somebody who was even close to unreliable. And furthermore, I read Octobriana. I read Octobriana 5 times, which is to say the motherfucker is ready to go. It is ready to go. What I imagine is about to happen, and this is where you'll chime in and correct me if I'm wrong. But the way I see things playing out is you just need to see how many of these fucking things to print up. You know what I mean? The book is done. It's ready to go. Beautifully designed already. We just need to see who wants it. We want to see who's going to invest in it. And I imagine the day after, maybe the same day that this Kickstarter campaign is toast, you hit a couple of buttons on a fucking keyboard and there's some little dudes in China printing this thing up.
You made one mistake, Ed. They're actually North American based. The printer that I'm working with has printers in Canada and the United States. I'm not sure which plant where it will be printed, but that's the only thing that you messed up on. Everything else is 100% accurate. As soon as I get that count, as soon as the Kickstarter ends, I am putting in the order. So I expect books to be at my house within 4 weeks of the Kickstarter ending, at which time I start doing fulfillment. So,
and that's the bottleneck. The book is ready to go. The book is ready to be printed. It's gonna be sort of the wheels are going to be set in motion near immediately from the second that the campaign is done. The bottleneck is that Jim is going to have to convince all of his nieces and nephews and his wife, who's on summer break from fucking a hard bunch of semesters at school. So now she has to stuff envelopes and go to the post office with wheelbarrows and all of that sort of thing. So he's got to convince all of these people to help him stuff envelopes. And then the people at the post office are going to be like, here's Jim again with another 100 or 200.
Yeah, so if you guys want to rib me, this is the best rib you can play, is order lots of copies of the book, because it is going to be me sitting with envelopes and piles and boxes of books to put together. But to reiterate, it is ready. It is ready to go to the printer. I can't wait to see the thing in person.
Me too.
You know, that's been the biggest thing, is like, I'm coloring a digital version because you can't do what I'm doing in print on screen.
Yeah.
These are going to be brighter colors than what you can see on your monitor. So
compare it to...
I need it in print. I can't. You know, you make this stuff, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I think you do this too. You get so excited about this idea that you're willing to dedicate all this time to making the thing. You want to see it in the real world.
I have an idea, filibuster, because I have some blacklight sensitive shit to show off to the people.
All right, man.
And from now on, guys, remind Jim to bring over his titty lady Viking blacklight poster shit. We gotta show that shit off, you know?
Yes. Yeah, and for you guys watching at home, if you haven't seen the Kickstarter page yet, it's Octobriana 1976, and I have that print on display in the video that I made to kind of talk about this project. It's set up behind me in that video, so you can at least get a sense of what these colors look like.
I gotta give shouts to my homeboy Kwong Lee who sent this to me, man. It's a sanctioned, legit, blacklight sensitive, fluorescent, fucking poster, and honestly that still doesn't even, like, on that screen, it doesn't even do it justice to what we're looking at right before our eyes, man.
You know, we talk all the time, Ed, about like making the comics special, making them worth existence.
Yes.
You know, why make it print instead of digital? You know, all of these things are qualities we've talked about from the beginning of Cartoonist.kayfabe, and that's what this is.
Yes.
It literally can't
100%.
exist anywhere else.
100%.
For this to work, it has to be made as a comic book, in print, in your hands. So this is my favorite thing to do, is making this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled. I had this idea when I first started doing blacklight screen printing, and it was like, why isn't there a comic book like this? And you know what? You guys didn't take advantage of that opportunity. I had a break in my schedule, so I finally get to come out with this, and I could not be more excited. You know, I've made a lot of things in my life that I get excited to see the printed piece, and this tops the charts.
Let me ask you, man. Let's talk some other stuff. Just satellite material around the idea of Kickstarter. Like, for instance, it seems like part of the culture of Kickstarter is, like, I saw on your Twitter, like, you've been checking out crowdfund things, man, and retweeting like certain ways. Is that like how it works, man? There's like a little quid pro quo where it's like, yo, I'll share yours, you share mine, kind of thing. Because this is stuff I never thought about, and to see one that our audience has as good of taste as like I thought they did, and that they're plunking down their loot to support this thing makes it a more attractive idea for me. And the fact that you're doing this is super exciting. So just seeing like all these little machinations of like how to make this thing run. You know, you wanted a couple G's. You got what 900 times more than that.
Yeah, it's good. It's going great. But there are a million of these ways in terms of like trading links, or I actually haven't traded any links. I've been following everybody, so when I see a Kickstarter pop up and it's somebody I'm friends with or whatever, I've been retweeting them.
Sure, yeah.
If I were a little bit smarter, I would make the deal. Hey, I'll retweet yours and vice versa.
Yeah, I wasn't implying a deal, like just like a invisible quid pro quo.
But I mean, the list of stuff, you know, Ed, you're a genius at selling, and that's what a lot of this is, you know. And I think it's one of the differences between previous generations of creators. You know, we talk to all these creators in interviews, and it comes up a lot in my head. Like when you hear them, especially if they're conscious of selling their stories, sometimes it's confined to Marvel would be, you have Spider-Man guest star. That's how you sell more books.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't necessarily that you could go outside of a traditional, you know, get into the distribution part.
Yeah.
And that's what this opportunity is. And there are a million ways to sell it. Like, be smart, you know, like I've gotten a couple of listings on like art sites.
Right.
And so, you know, it's an audience that's a little different than comics. But in my mind, it's like if you're into printed stuff, you know, zines, magazines, things that look unique, this book is going to look unique. Like, you may want this, so try to get in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super cool, and I can't imagine. Like, first off, I imagine many different kind of versions of this happening along the way. I don't know that the second printing or whatever will be the same fluorescent. Maybe it'll be for color or something. And you'll have that opportunity. You'll have that choice to make. But then there will also be the component. Like, I mean, this Octobriana has a worldwide appeal. This is going to be translated in other languages and stuff. And in this world of Kickstarter or crowdfunding, we'll say, that doesn't have to be the end all be all. And there is a lot of success to be had otherwise, associated with like your thing will be translated in another language. I bet there's going to be some good deals to make there. And to the maker out there, that is an extra income stream. You know what I mean? Like, if your end all be all, if your income is a crowdfund, and that's it, like, poor you in a lot of ways, man. Because it's like, if you could have, like, I don't feel right if I don't have a book that's not translated in like 5 languages. And each one of those, Hip Hop Family Tree, 14 languages. And each one of those is 2 checks to 4 checks a year extra on top of the US shit. You know what I'm saying? Results may vary. Poland, whatever, man. I'll get me a latte or something like that. Japan, France, Italy, va fango. I've been watching some Sopranos and shit lately, man. So like, you make those moves. This is for the early adopters. And there are other forms that this thing could take down the road, and you could do licensing things, and you could work with other publishers. You could work with the French. Like, the French will eat this up.
There's almost no end to this stuff.
Yeah.
It's the nice thing of being in control of it is you can sell different editions. You can sell in different markets. I plan to go through Diamond, and retailers. I don't have a retailer level in Kickstarter, and sometimes people do, and sometimes they don't, which would be like a discount you know, like buy 5 of them at a discounted rate. And I talked to some retailers, and they were very lukewarm about it. So any retailers out there, I want to deal with you, and I'm happy to do it directly. Message me, because I have a list of retailers who have done that. And as soon as books are ready, we will, you know, I will email you. So, you know, there are all these avenues. To me, Kickstarter is just one more way to reach some readers that you might not reach otherwise.
Yeah.
It doesn't wipe any of them out. You know, it doesn't eliminate comic shops. I want this book in comic shops.
Yeah.
It's where it should live.
And you want this in comic shops too, man. You want to bump into this.
But as
thing.
you say, Ed, this is for, you know, early adopters. You know, and I'm just trying to get the word out there because there's so much stuff that I see, especially like this kind of thing, that there aren't going to be an infinite amount of these printed. There's so many things that I'll find, and it's like, it's out of print. I found it a year later. So I don't want that to happen to people. And that's the goal now. You know, that's the mode I'm in, is like, get it in front of everybody that might be interested while they can act on it.
Dig, man. That's the spiel, dude. Congrats on the Kickstarter. It's going healthy. It's going strong. It's going to be very fun to keep checking in and see how this motherfucker plays out.
It's very fun going through it as like experimental process. You know, like this is all new to me. So like I've been trying to make notes about it, to share things either mostly on here.
Yeah, of course.
And just document what the process is. You know, like I'm learning a lot. I don't think it'll be the last time I do some kind of crowdfunding. It's been good. So far, so good.
Can we talk Mark Millar for a minute?
You know what? Let's 1 second, because I want to mention something about Rick Veitch. So we'll go two conversations back.
Okay.
2 shoot interviews back, we had Rick Veitch on, and speaking about crowdfunding and self-publishing and alternative distribution, he's been self-publishing through Amazon's print-on-demand service. I'm very interested in all of these options, and I didn't think to ask him when we had him on the show, but how does he work with comic shops in terms of publishing through Amazon? And a few retailers brought up that question, and so I reached out to Rick. I emailed him that question because who knows, maybe I'll publish through Amazon at some point. And so I want to read his response so I'm not paraphrasing. He said, "In the past, I've offered retailers the Amazon books at 50% plus shipping." He didn't send out a new mass email with the Boy Max Immortal, the most recent issue, because of basically COVID, I think. You know, like everyone's kind of under the gun, shops are closed.
Yeah.
But any retailers out there, feel free to message him on Facebook or email him directly, because that is how he works with comic shops, is basically selling to them directly at 50% discount. So it's great, you know, like it still works. And I see a lot of retailers talking right now about not being reliant on one distributor.
Yeah.
So you don't have to rely on Diamond to get Rick Veitch's new comics at 50% discount if you're a retailer. It's very exciting to me because any of these models have to work that way. I need to be able to fulfill retailer demand.
Totally. I mean, we were raised in the fucking comic shop, man. We gotta support that.
And of course, Rick Veitch is conscious of that. You know, I mean, he's been self-publishing for decades. He knows how to work with retailers. So I was happy to see him write it, you know, and clarify that for me and anybody that had a question. There you go.
I see the email on your paper. Is that to be said because you didn't?
Yes, I think so. So his email is rarebit@sover.net, SOVER.net. And,
man, those early internet adopters, man, still holding on to their Roadrunner accounts and whatnot.
So retailers, man, go out there and order some of Rick Veitch's latest comics.
Yeah, he'll deal with you for sure. And do you think, does it come from Amazon?
I think so, yeah. I think he basically does the order.
Hits the buttons.
Shipment, yeah.
I see a lot of that arbitrage kind of stuff on eBay purchases that I get. Like, I'll buy something on eBay, and it'll actually be an Amazon Prime that shows up the very next day, because just the arbitrage, like, between Amazon and eBay, the disparity is a couple dollars or something. They make, you know, they made 75 cents off of me or something like that, so... It's a cool thing. You gotta get in a hustle mode now, man. Like one of the things we're seeing is that, like, your job might not necessarily take care of you, man. So we gotta take care of our own, dude. And you know, that's a part of the puzzle, man.
It feels like you find that combination that works for what you're making.
Yeah.
And you know, it's gonna be a little different for everybody. I think the other thing with comic shops, there's been a lot of talk about distribution. And it's come up in these interviews with me, and it's like, I don't know that there's one answer, because all these shops are individual businesses. Like they're completely unique from shop to shop and how they're run. And I imagine the future of comic shop retail is going to be very specialized, where these shops are figuring out the best distribution model for them, as opposed to all the shops in general. It's going to be much more, each shop may have a little bit of a different arrangement with which distributors they're dealing with.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in the same breath, if we reflect upon all of the shoot interviews that we've done so far, for the most part, the streaming ones and whatnot, one of the common threads that I think all of the cartoonists share is that these are people who have they've made themselves, they designed their careers, and it seems that it's always been that way, that you kind of have had to do that in order to have longevity in this game, man. You got to design your career. You have 2 options, I think, man. And I'm just off the top of the head, kind of. I didn't like fully cogently like form this out. So two main ways of thinking when it comes to a comic career. It's like you work on a property, you get the job, right? And it's a big page. It's a Batman. It's the thing that you make your name on or whatever. But the fickle, like Wednesday Warrior kind of audience, it's been proven that if a motherfucker's gonna read Fantastic Four the month after Kirby leaves, there's a big chunk of people out there that don't give a fuck about you at all. And then the other method, which is to me the safer play and the smarter play, is to create your own kind of brand of comics. Like, I feel like X-Men Grand Design could not have happened with like somebody like off the street. It's too weird looking. It's too ugly. It's too raw. I didn't trace fucking photos from Sports Illustrated magazine. You know what I'm saying? But 14 languages, New York Times bestseller, 5 languages of WYSIWYG, a million books out there. They're going to work with me.
It's almost, you show up and it's like your readers are walking behind you.
Yeah.
You're not walking in the office by yourself.
Yeah, exactly, man. So like the people that we've spoken to are people who have designed their careers and kind of like carved their niche. If a store is diamond centric, good luck. You know what I'm saying? Like, good luck. If your model is to go through the motions and do the same thing you did for the past 25, 30 years, good luck. You're leaving money on the table. You got to fuck with the Kickstarters. You got to see what people are doing in the crowdfunded space. You got to see what the independent kids are doing in like a zine landscape, man. When you go to like an SPX or something, you see a very hip, kind of like smart retailer there. They got like the long box, and everybody sort of knows them, and could probably bet that they'll be able to sell 10 books to the dude as soon as he comes to their table.
And some of the retailers that I specifically dealt with 20 years ago at my first SPX, they're still in business.
Yeah.
And it's because they're looking for those things.
You can't. We're in business. You got to shop. You're in business. Like, make it work. Like, don't take anything for granted. Like, and don't think that Steve Jeppy's going to have the answer to all your problems. Like, you got to do you. You got to take care of yourself, man. To a certain extent, shops are definitely going to go away. It's going to happen. It's freaking sucks. But you were able to buy comics before the comic shop, you know? Like, it's going to be there at the antique store and the used bookstore and shit. And it's like, well, if we go back to that piece, then there's just going to have to be a new kind of market that will emerge, because the need is there. The want is there. People have been, the shops around town have started opening up again. You know, weird limited capacity, 10 people could come in. We're still going to do curbside, whatever. People who have never read a DC comic are checking them out, because those are like the first on the thing. So people are like hungry for some fresh new comics. I want to go back to the fucking comic store. You know what I'm saying? And just dig around and check some shit out. But all in due time. You know, we got some crazy bullshit that we're dealing with, some unprecedented, at least in our lifetimes and our parents' lifetimes, man, that we have to kind of like figure our way out of. But the strong will survive, and the strong has nothing to do with brawn, and it has nothing to do with lip service. It has to do with intellect and making shit happen.
And if you're watching this channel, if you're active on social media, you're seeing those shops that are adapting.
Speaking of which, we forgot this part, man. But in the past week, we have sold more shirts on our Teespring and our Spread Shop than we have in all of 2020. So whatever we said a week or two ago, I didn't go back to the tape and review the footage, but people are out there, they're talking about us. And they are spreading the fucking word of kayfabe. I think we asked them to. And they are buying shirts like a motherfucker. And I can't believe. Did you all get your stimulus checks like this past week, man?
That could be it.
Because the amount of shirts, like, it's like if we keep this shit going, you ain't going to see no more wood panel and shitty studio anymore. You know what I'm saying, man? So
we're going to be Steve Austin, man, t-shirt sellers.
We were asking you guys, man, to spread the word, share it on your socials or whatever. Keep talking. Keep making us loot. Look, we got 2 microphones. You dig?
It is awesome. And by the way, we have a new shirt design this week.
Sick.
So you guys that are in the shirt market, please check it out. It's inspired by the EC Comics logo, but with a little bit of Cartoonist.kayfabe flair added to it. And I don't know what it is, Ed, but man, keep sharing the Cartoonist.kayfabe word, because that's how we grow. That's the only way we grow so far.
Yeah.
So keep it up, man. It's paying off, because we are definitely seeing a lot of new people popping up, and really appreciate that.
The Kayfabe Brain Trust, man. Can't leave home without him. Can't stream videos without him, Jimmy. Let's talk Mark Millar.
Yes, let's. Sorry to sidetrack that. What
Wow,
a delightful interview Mark Millar turned out to be.
Yeah, such a cool cat. If I'm in this game, I'm a lifer. There's nobody going to take the pencil out of my hand, man. So I need to make this thing work. And why not start at somebody who's operating at a very high level?
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation from beginning to end. It was great to see like big, bold moves by him.
Yeah.
The choice to leave Marvel stands out to me. Imagine somebody offering you $1 million to keep writing Marvel comics. It seems like a no-brainer. I think very few of us would walk away from that. And yet he does. You know, he had made that decision to go in and create her own direction, stuck to it, and certainly paid off.
It's been a proven formula for success for a lot of cartoonists, creators out there. You make your little splash at the big two. You do your little deal there, man. You lay down for the 3 count a time or two, man, and sell some Marvel and DC books. And then you develop a certain fan base. Bring those motherfuckers with you to some creator-owned stuff, to your Image book. The most successful Image books have that sort of pedigree. Exceptions to the rule would be like Walking Dead with Kirkman, even though we did do his little tour of laying down for some 3 counts over there at Marvel. And there's that book called Chew that fascinates me, that I think sort of came out of nowhere. No audience to begin with, and just kind of like went gangbusters. I'd actually like to talk to those guys and just try to like track that success and what they think went into that, because that's what this is. This channel is a very selfish thing, man, and it's about our own education. And if you get something out of it, cool. You know what I'm saying? Good for you.
I always say, like, you can trust the motivation if you filter it through the selfish.
This, man, that should be on a shirt. There was a one piece, man. We're going to keep it fun for a hot minute, man, with Millar, when he tells us about the Brian Bendis prank.
I laughed so hard.
Now, as soon as he said the name David Mamet, you might even hear a guffaw in there. Reason being, when I was a little dude going to Pittsburgh Comic-Con, I'm talking Caliber Press. Brian Michael Bendis was a attendee. Mm-hmm. And I treated, even from 12 years of age, man, I treated the comic convention scene as a real convention for people, for headspace, man, for information gathering, which is to say, I went to all the panels. Anyone that interested me, constantly. And Bendis was doing like writing in comics panels when he was a fucking nobody. I guess he had some Hollywood interest for like Jinx or something.
You know, I don't know when people start following Bendis, but the dude was a hustler.
Yeah.
Like back to those black and white days, man, he's getting his books in bookstores
Really?
himself. Yeah, like local bookstores he would go to around Cleveland and stuff, man. You'd find his work in the bookstores.
That's
you know, the
dope.
Barnes and Nobles and the Borders and things. Like, the guy worked.
When Millar says the name David Mamet, I just immediately get projected back to like the first one of those panels that I went to with Brian Michael Bendis, and the joke was, take a shot every time he says the name David Mamet. So when Millar sets it up that way, I'm crying because I know this is this dude's hero. The amount of times I heard David Mamet come out of Brian Michael Bendis' mouth, dude. First off, this is mean. Like, you should have an ocean between the two of you if you pull a practical joke like this. This is WWE. This is wrestling level ribs.
It is.
That are fucking, could be vicious. When I got into the game, Harvey Picar is the dude that brought me in. I had to drag friends to Squirrel Hill to check the movie out, man, because I was like, like, it's a good movie, trust me. And my friends are fucking assholes, and I love them for it, man. They're real assholes, not keyboard clackers. I saw we got messages, man, about people who are telling us on a keyboard how to be outlaws.
Oh, man.
On a keyboard. It's Outlaw Comics. We're a couple of squares who sit around making comics all day. We ain't outlaws. Anyhow, I brought the homies, man, and we went to go see American Splendor. And when we leave, my one homeboy could do a reasonable impersonation. The next week, I get a call from Harvey Picar. What do you think I'm thinking?
You hear so many of these stories, like you have to have doubt.
Yeah. What do you think? And I'm like, is this really Harvey Picar? And it would have been, now my friends are assholes, but we're not frat boys. You know what I'm saying? We're homies. We're not frat boys. I'm not putting fucking banana peels under your feet type shit, trying to trip you out. So like this would have been atypical. Like my friends wouldn't make that kind of joke. And of course it was Harvey Picar, and like my professional career is born. I wouldn't even think to pull that rib, because to me it's like so crazy and like mean. But the fact that Bendis is like a good sport about it, and is even a good enough sport to like still let him tell the story, because I think you could even make that argument to like, all right, you got me. Just don't. It's like at the end of Jackass, whenever that dude has that car in his asshole, and the doctor's like, "Listen, I know, and that's one too many. Share the little joke, but like, don't put it out into the universe. You know what I'm saying? But those are men. You know, they're comfortable with themselves."
Yeah, that's great stuff. But it probably helps where Bendis was at that point in his career. It's a different story if you're 20 and you have no paying work. That might be a little bit of a meaner prank than whenever you're sort of pretty high up in the game.
Yeah. What else did you take away? I took so much away.
I did, and I mean, we could recap the whole interview, and all I would say is if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. It really is pretty lean and mean. He talks about writing endings first, which I think is genius, especially for editing and like cutting for space. If you're really working within some sort of parameters, I think that makes it's so brilliant. Of course, work that way. Talks about blockbusters being his favorite kind of movies, and his comics reflecting that. Really articulate in that description, but all of it is valuable. The more people that we talk to, the more I think that their writing styles reflect them in their interviews and the way they talk and communicate. And I think one of the things Millar does great is it's concise, it's clear, it's entertaining. And guess what? I found his interview to be that way. So, I think the two are connected.
Are you suggesting that we've recently done a shoot interview with yet another writer?
Hey, I think it applies to artists too. Storytellers in general. I think it comes across in everything they do. And Millar, no exception, and anyone else we talk to, no exception.
I made that note super early on in my comics career, just in like meeting people. It's like, if you are a good storyteller on the page, chances are you can verbalize it reasonably well. And that seems to have been the way it goes, man. It might be an exception to the rule here or there, but then there are also even people that you might think like a Chris Ware would stumble over his words when he speaks to new people. It's not the truth, man. Like he's an amazing orator and has a lot of great stories to tell, and tells them in an effective and clean way.
That filter is that he is so articulate as a cartoonist. Of course he is in real life.
Yeah, you can't. There's no on-off switch to that kind of precision.
That's a good way to describe it. And the flip side, instead of writers, artist, is that you meet the artist in real life, and they usually look a little bit like their drawings.
Yeah, that's true, man. Look at this fuck scene I drew, man. Like I'm not saying I look like the dude or anything, but I'm just saying like it was a fuck scene day at the Kayfabe Studios, man, a couple of days ago.
I'm glad I wasn't here for that day.
Yeah, sure, man. You should saw the reference, man. And like, look at that shit right there, dude. Like, I'm drawing on smaller paper these days, and I got finer tools, real thin fine liners.
You should show off that page.
Oh yeah, look at that staircase, man. How cool is that?
It's incredible. Also, people at home, look at every border is a different panel style.
Yeah, that's gonna be my new steez, man. Like on this thing, dude, is to just have some visually interesting stuff to look at, even in domestic kind of scenarios. Now, you should know, like in a Red Room comic, if you see too much domesticity, I think is the word, it's going to turn a corner and it's going to get bloody.
The calm before the storm.
Exactly, and I'm going to be getting on that shit tonight probably. Got some editing to do.
little bit of the old ultra-violence.
Ultra-violence. You know, somebody, once again, man, the audience we've cultivated, super fucking dope, super fucking literate, and a lot of good intel, a lot of good info. Somebody made the correlation between like the ultra-violence and like Mortal Kombat fight fatalities, and it's not a direct correlation that I had myself, but subconsciously it was there because I keep trying to one up myself with like crazy brutality, and it's like, of course, like this would have been a seed planted 30 years ago.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense. I love seeing those kinds of things become apparent too,
right?
Because like early on, there's obviously pro wrestling concepts at play with some of the character concepts. But the video games make perfect sense as well. That's great.
Yeah. Sort of the last days of the arcade. Hey man, how many? Speaking of the audience who is so on point with us, got a bunch of emails this past week letting me know what Wizard has been up to. Have you gotten similar emails as well?
No, I haven't. This is exciting.
Yeah, you're gonna love this, man.
Oh man.
So the Shameless Brothers, new business that they're in. I guess they got some sort of capital, man. They were able to like use mergers and acquisitions, like get some funding and now spread some funding around. Jello shot makers.
Wow.
Perfect, right?
Yeah, it kind of fits.
These are the kind of characters, man, and we have some of them here in town, and they would be the serial entrepreneur. And they're the people who have no real conviction about like the product that they're putting together. It's not Mr. Hines, who is like, you know, put his name on the damn ketchup that he done created. And I actually think he did create it. It's like one of the few stories in corporate histories where like the guy with the name on it actually did invent the thing. Very rare. I could be wrong. But these people, they just kind of like put money in. They sort of go where the wind is going, and where a little bit of prognostication, a little bit of hypotheses, and spreading some money out. I think they had some equity put into like a version of MMA years ago. I was sitting in a dentist's office one day in like the aughts, and about to get my cleaning, and there's like a financial magazine, and it's Garib on the cover. I'm like, whoa, I haven't thought about this name in a long ass time. It's a financial magazine, and he's got like 2 big boxing gloves on or something like that, and it's about how he has pivoted several times, and was able to like he's like the golden goose of the like 18 to 35-year-old male demographic. Like that's what the whole article was about. So yeah, man, Jello shot machines. I think there's a Chromium one.
That's
Chromium variant.
Wow. That's amazing.
Whenever that news came out, I don't know where it would have originally appeared or whatever. Maybe it was a Bleeding Cool article somebody said. I forget, man, but like the second it went live, bing 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 bing, man, mad emails, mad DMs on Facebook and
Are they using
Instagram.
the Wizard name as part of it?
No, like I don't know. Go look for the article. So Kayfabe will put it in the link.
Or don't.
Yeah.
This is probably as much as we need to spend on it.
Yeah, figure out a little bit more about like mastering an ink stroke with that little bit of neural capacity that would hold that intel about the Wizard.
There are hundreds of ways to spend your time that are better than looking up the Shameless Brothers Jello shot machine.
Perfect. I mean, it's perfect, right?
You took that bullet for the kayfabe brain trust, Ed. No one else needs to go down that alley.
That's fair. What else? Absolute Batman Year One is a video we posted recently. That thing sort of took off a little bit. Whenever a video is particularly popular for us, our humble channel, I start to like wonder, like, okay, well, what was it? Was it just the content? Was it this? Or was it that? Part of me thinks that making a declarative statement in the title has a piece to do with it, rather than just like title and something sort of drab, because it's like, this is a must-have for the comics maker. It'll probably get a click, you know? So that's like one of the thoughts that I had in my mind.
That's interesting. That's a great book. So it is essential for somebody that's aspiring to make comics. I think there's so much good to take away from that book for sure. And it's just, Batman Year One on its own is one of the all-time great comics. So there's probably a few avenues of interest coming to that video.
Totally. The Tick is another one that we talked about, man, which I was very happy to dust off the archives, man. I haven't read that book. I might not have read that book since the 90s. Super fun to read, issue 1. I kind of want to go... You could read all 12 issues in 2 hours.
Yeah.
We might have to do another video, more comprehensive with the rest of the series, because it's fun,
It is fun. I love these videos because I like to see everybody else weighing in. One correction, I wasn't sure what Ben Edlund had done in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He has a huge list of credits. So very successful in that realm, doing a lot with Joss Whedon and in the worlds that Joss Whedon has built. But so much fun to just hear Tick stories, people that are connected to it or read it in the newsletter, the New England Comics newsletter before it becomes a comic.
1986.
Incredible stuff. So, and was he in high school, I think, whenever he started those strips? I love all that because I just know the Tick from reading it and enjoying it. It's really cool to get these glimpses deeper into the Tick history.
Yeah, and people show up, man, and with some connection to New England comics or Ben Edlund in general, and they said stuff like, from my point of view, from what I glean from what they say, this is like one of the very rare exceptions where basically almost an outsider, though that might be too strong to call him that, because he at least had some interest in comics as a hobbyist, as a reader, essentially, but his aspirations were filmic, and this is the exception to the rule of somebody who has these filmic aspirations. But what do you do if you have no budget? Zero budget. You could afford pen and paper. This guy became extremely proficient at comics. Like, there is, he did 250 pages of comics, the output that I did since the Cartoonist.kayfabe channel began. And they're all knockout fucking pages. That's savant level stuff. You know what else is kind of savant level shit? Like, now that I think about it, man. Let me you and I we do this YouTube shit. It's one day a week. We just kind of connect, man. It's like jacking out of the matrix, man, getting away from the table for a little bit, giving the wrist some time to breathe. And we have almost 17,000 subscribers. How many weeks has it been since October 5th, 2018?
It was 85 weeks ago.
We've only recorded 85 days. We've had 85 sessions of recording, man, and we have almost 17,000 subscribers. That's ill. Imagine if we put out a couple, little videos a day or some shit.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Easy to be six figures, man. But let's if our faces are on some football cards or something, let's flip on the back and take a look at amount of pages constructed, amount of books published, amount of travels that came about because of the good old kayfabe shit, man. Opportunities, man. We're holding shit down. Like, you have this Kickstarter going down. Tom has the Kirby book that is doing super well in the midst of this crazy stuff. I got some shit on the horizon that is very pompous and elitist and snobbish that I can't wait to talk about. It's probably the highest level of snobbery. I'm talking like wine glasses with the pinky up shit. It's going to be fun, man. Some of you going to hate it. I can't wait. I can't wait. I also can't wait to get advice on how I could be more successful. Hit 1 million first.
You mentioned that filmic detail in regards to Ben Edlund's aspirations.
Yes.
And it made me remember something else from Mark Millar. His comics have often been described as, that widescreen stuff. I think one of his early notable things was Authority and then Ultimates, which were kind of these blockbuster type movies. And he mentions Bernie Krigstein when we're talking to him, one of my favorite cartoonists. And so we took a minute to talk about it. And when we say stuff's influenced by movies or whatever, comics are influenced by movies, there's a lot to that. It's not just copying compositions or having these big wide panels. It's also things like timing.
Yes.
And that's one of the things Ben Edlund really did well in Tick, and I think it's key to comedy. Exactly. But it's also a lot of these cartoonists, from Will Eisner to Frank Miller to Bernie Krigstein, they did this stuff with time. And we never think of that whenever we think, you know, it's such a negative comparison usually to reference film with comics. But there's a lot there that goes beyond just the surface of copying compositions to actual storytelling mechanics. And I think timing's one of the great ones. And it was that was a highlight for me talking to Mark Millar is having that come out. Very
clear that the dude is extremely literate about comics. He knows the stuff. He has not been Edlund using this medium to advance himself in some other medium. It happened, you know, opportunities presented themselves and he took them. Dope. I would do the same. Anybody would. But the dude, I mean, the reason why he was chilling with us is because he's been watching shoot interviews and is saying the same stuff that a lot of people are saying. Like, yo, I feel like I'm chilling with two of my homies just like nerding out about comics. I want to actually be able to interact with you. Like, that was like when we started doing these stream ones. That was the crazy shit when we had Todd McFarlane barking on our face and dropping science, because I watch every Todd McFarlane thing that exists on YouTube that's like, you know, an hour or longer. You could choose like 20 minutes or longer, like any of that big stuff, man. So I saw the Stan Lee gimmick, man. I saw that Devil You Know or whatever documentary that they put out in Canada. But now that dude from those docs is like staring at us, telling us some shit. And I could say something into this thing and he's going to respond. The TV dude's going to respond. That's some futuristic shit, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how that works. I think about that a lot, the various cartoonists that have come to us as opposed to the other way around, just because it's like, that's how it works. Like, you put these ideas out there and it signals.
Yeah.
You know, and how people connect, it's pretty random. It's hard to reverse engineer it. It's like you do your best work, you try to connect it to this audience, but there are other people that make those connections from the direction they're coming from. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's we're not going for the cheap pop. It's a humble sort of project that we're working on here on Cartoonist.kayfabe. But the realness and the authenticity is right there, and we know the questions to ask when you get a good guest, man. It comes from years of experience of sort of either kicking it with these dudes, sort of trailing behind and seeing how things operate, and as makers, we're sort of keyed into some of the questions that have never been addressed by like, and you know what, he said it perfectly when he's like, oh, you guys know who Dick Giordano is. Like, I could let that part, because he's a consummate storyteller, and communication is like, that's storytelling. So if I'm talking to somebody, you know, you guys know, man, like when you're talking with your girl and she says, can you believe Daphne did this and blah, blah, blah. And then you have to go, okay, who's Daphne? Like, because you know that's what she wants. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do your preambles to make sure that the reporter doesn't have to go there, you know, because that's storytelling. So when he like was able to like let that go down, that's when the nerdy shit can happen. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we present.
Yes.
Fuck, Jimmy, how long we been at this, dude? 52 minutes and we still got business to attend to.
Couple more things.
Couple? Hit it.
Couple podcasts, if you guys are still stuck at home in quarantine and looking for things to listen to that I enjoyed this week. Bill Simmons, sports guy on The Ringer, talks to The Undertaker for an hour. Out of character Undertaker.
Wow.
Very fun to hear. I hope that Undertaker does more of these stories and just kind of talks about the real experience of his career. But that was a pretty entertaining hour. Tony Hawk, legendary skateboarder Tony Hawk, is on Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan, I guess it's their first time meeting. So
that's cool.
It's a great conversation that really covers a lot of Tony Hawk's background. I'm a fan of his. I've read his book and stuff, so I'm familiar with his story, and it still covers a lot of stuff that I didn't know about, including talking about when the skateboarding industry dips, and almost everybody involved sort of leaves except Tony Hawk, and he's doing demos in like amusement park parking lots because he's just grinding. Like, how can he stay in the skate world? But guess what? As it starts to grow again, it's like he's the guy, you know. And so, really interesting. He tells a story about turning pro and how that happens. Joe Rogan asks him, you know, how does he become a pro skateboarder? He had been doing all those contests. He said at the top of the form, you check amateur or pro. After doing well in amateur for a while, he just checked pro one day. The most ridiculous story. But it's amazing. And I mean, like, you know, you talk about these iconic figures. That's a guy we all grew up with.
Totally.
There was no business path to being a professional skateboarder, especially a 30 or 40-year-old professional skateboarder. Unprecedented before he kind of pioneered that path. And so it's cool to hear him talk about it. You don't always think of him as entrepreneur, but hey man, he's made a great living doing it. And you get a chance to kind of see, some of the choices he made along the way. And the he's funny, he's entertaining, very easy to listen to. So that was a highlight for me this week on podcast.
He at least in part, or at least for a period of years, he was sort of down that same road as like a George Foreman, where the grill makes more money, because that Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game and the royalties that generated, I don't know if he talks about, I didn't see that, I'm going to watch that one for sure, but the royalties that generated, ridiculous.
You know what he does talk about with that? Because I agree, I think that's the thing that really like cemented him is I don't even know what, like a Mount Rushmore figure of 80s and 90s.
When he did that 900, man, people started to talk his name again.
But he said the thing that came out then is a bunch of people calling him sellout.
I love it.
And so you get to see like there's a level of success, and then a certain amount of haters show up.
It's in comics. It works the same way, man. It's like
I think it's in anything.
Certain number of units. Well, it's Cartoonist.kayfabe. Certain number of units sell, you're gonna get that. You know what I'm saying? That's why I sort of feel good about like how things are rolling, man. Because you got to let that shit slide off your back.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly what he said. He's not holding grudges with any of that stuff, man. Moving forward.
I just saw Jay-Z was like on a Breakfast Club or something, and he was just like, why would it ever like cross your mind to even like choose that kind of negative energy to tell somebody like, it should be this one. This is the reason why I didn't get yours, because it stems from jealousy. It's plain and simple, man. You've done the thing. You saw the thing through. You've allowed yourself the vulnerability of getting the slings and arrows chucked your way, and you're still there, and you're still smiling, man. And that fucking gives people hemorrhoids. It gives people some fucking big-ass grape tomato fucking hemorrhoids, and I sort of thrive on that. I've always been that dude. Even as a kid, I used to hang out with all these bands here in town, and my crew was a bunch of fucking assholes, and it was fun playing like the dozens, snapping, just busting on one another and getting those dudes to turn up and try to kill you. It's like, well, you just showed your emotion. You know what I mean? It's corny. But where were we going? Oh, what were we talking about? Like the Tony Hawk.
Certain levels of success breed.
Oh yeah. Of course.
It's a measure of success in a lot of ways.
It is, man. There are a lot of people here in town who are good artists and reasonable cartoonists for sure. They just cannot allow themselves that vulnerability of like putting the work out there, and it's a tragedy, because there are cartoonists who would mop the floor with who mop the floor with me, and they just can't put it out there for fear of rejection from the tribe. But the thing is, man, if you are the tribal leader, you oust the cornballs. You know what I mean? You oust them. You don't even see, hear, or anything about their existence, because they're fully irrelevant. It's fun. It's good to be king, man. Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Indeed.
What else you got, man?
That's everything, Ed.
I think we hit all the marks, and we still have video to record, Jimmy. Hit him with some Kickstarter business.
You guys can follow Octobriana 1976 on Kickstarter right now. It's up for a couple more weeks, so go check that out if you haven't already.
And you're going to want to check out the Red Room comics that are streaming on my Patreon. 15 pages up so far, 98 pages. 94 pages done. I got a couple laid out. 94 pages complete, man. New strips every Tuesday. Same old marching orders of the Hip Hop Family Tree. Couple pages every week. Be an early adopter. I'm sliding out behind the scenes stuff. Pencils. Redrew some panels already, because guess what? I know the penciler. I know the artist. And I told that motherfucker this piece didn't work. I'm going to put one of those pages up today or tomorrow, man. So hit it.
I love that stuff.
Patreon.com/Ed Piscor. You think about like what that is, what that space is. And it's for people who want to see behind the curtain. Your average reader just wants the book off the shelf. Yes. Or just wants to hit Comixology, and it's going to be there that way. Like, you hit the Patreon, you're an early adopter. This stuff is going to see the light of day in other forms and fashions, no doubt, man. Maybe many. So pick your poison. It's for the early adopters. So you gotta assume that the early adopter is down with process stuff because they've done enough to like research your name and to know your name, so they're following your shit already. You slide that stuff out and be like, spoilers be damned, man. Here's the intention. I fucked up here because I gave you too much as a reader too early. That's the page I'm going to be posting like tonight or tomorrow.
Very cool, man.
Yeah, it's super fun, man. So subscribe to the channel. Let's get these numbers up, man. Going to be 17,000 within no time, man. Hopefully by the time we do our 86th day of recording.
I have total faith in that. In the meanwhile, subscribe to the Cartoonist.kayfabe e-newsletter at the link below the video. And pick up the merch and t-shirts that have been flying off the shelves at the links below this video.
Jimmy came up with that EC Comics gimmick, man, and it's freaking great. He sent it to me, and I was like, what do you think? What do I think, man? This is like the greatest shirt I ever see, man. Keep grabbing those shirts, man. It's going to make it possible for us to increase production values with the thing, man. And once again, if we do a second week of selling the shirts like we did the past couple of days, I'm going to have to adorn my Prada bucket hat.
I'm getting excited for whenever things do unlock and we start to see these in the wild.
Yeah,
That's always fun.
Totally. I was thinking like at Heroes Con last year, we had about 6,000 subscribers and we saw over 100 shirts, man. Like last track at like 120 something. There's got to be 500.
Yes.
This next time, man.
By the way, if you're getting these shirts and we know there are a ton of these orders going out, post the pictures. Let's see what they look like.
Yeah. Like we'll totally like
go to your comic shops as they're opening up and get your picture in front of those shops.
Yeah, and if you don't have a mask, you get the Read More Comics one. Just put it up like that, man, and people will think that you're there for a store signing. All right, man. Give them the merch orders. We're out of here.
Read more comics.